Here we go. Good. Welcome, everyone. Good evening and welcome to the Red Room. I'm Heather Carlile, and tonight the topic is grief. As many of you know, I've written a manual on grief recovery, and that comes from the years that I ran grief recovery groups. One of my very favorite things to do. And I needed a manual because, you know me, I need my handouts, I need to give you information. And so my grief recovery guide, the long one, is about 60, 70 pages long. I also have a mini guide. And if you're interested in the grief recovery guide that I have, you can purchase it online on my website. And you can also download the mini one on one of my blogs. Tonight I'm focusing on grief recovery because of a special request. One of the people contacted me and said, because I asked, what would you like me to talk about? And she said that she lost a pregnancy. And that's a hard thing to handle. Most people don't know what to do. They don't know what to say. They don't know how to be with somebody who's lost a pregnancy. And often your spouse doesn't know. So tonight I thought that I would give you an overview of grief recovery and how grieving works. And I'm so interested to hear what it is that you've lost and if you've finished grieving and recovered from the loss in the process, or if you kind of put it aside and never really have finished it. And we can do that, and sometimes it's a very healthy thing to do that. So tonight I'm going to walk through the introduction to how grief works so that you know it, you've got it, you can share it with the people you love or with your children and know how to handle it in a loving and intelligent way. So thank you. Thank you for tuning in. And anytime you like, type me a question, chime in, tune in. I'm always happy to hear from you, and it's very encouraging, actually, for me to hear from you. I know that, I'm on track, it's making a difference, and you're really interested in learning and moving forward. So thanks for tuning in tonight, everyone. The first thing, if you downloaded your handout, and there's a link there right beside my TV screen on your RedRoom, where you can download the handout for tonight. And it's 2 brief pages, and of course the top of the page shows my grief recovery model. Now, when I use this model, sometimes I use it, I'm just going to adjust my screen here. There we go. Sometimes I use it in the business world or with people who don't really want to talk about grief per se. It's also the change model. I know you've heard this, that there are 2 things that you can depend on in life, taxes and death. And one of the other things you've heard that you can depend on is change. And change means growth to me. And moving through something to something better, and the progress of time as it goes forward, and that we move from one thing to another. And oftentimes we forget that if we're growing, that means change. If we're moving from this to something better, that means that we've grown, yes, and we've changed, yes. But because we've gone over here, means that we've left this one over here behind. And when we've left something behind, we've lost something. Oftentimes, and really and truly, correct me if I'm wrong for you, but oftentimes this over here is better than this was. It's still a loss. And there's still a necessity to let go of the whatever it was before and to process it. If it was something that was important to us or valuable to us, then we logically have an attachment to it. We care about it. And if it's taken away, it's like, oh, we've lost something. Or something has been changed or sometimes broken and can't be replaced, can never come back. And loss, change can be a small thing, like, well, I just finished going through my work diary and I'm writing the last date on it and I'm moving to the next one. Or it can be what happened with Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans and the area surrounding the city, how much they lost. And that it wasn't specifically anybody to blame. It was, so to speak, an act of God that the hurricane came. And now we've got this other loss with the oil spill. And that one, we've got certain things to blame. But the whole thing is about we had something and then we lost it. And then the lady that asked me to speak about this tonight, she was pregnant. And partway through her pregnancy, she had a miscarriage, which means she lost her baby. Not only that, but she lost all of the dreams. You know that we're having our second grandchild, and we already have our first one. And the whole family is excited. It happens when someone gets pregnant. Everybody knows, oh my gosh, I'm going to be an auntie, an uncle, a grandma, grandpa. My sister, my brother is going to have a new child. And then you immediately start saying, well, is it a boy or a girl? And what do you need? How can we help? How can we participate? Because it's wonderful. And then, of course, you know, if it's if you know it's going to be a boy, then you start planning all these other things, and then you start dreaming about, oh, Little League and such like that. Depending on who you are and where you live and what your culture is, you're already thinking about, ooh, like Jack was saying, you know, our house isn't childproof. In a year or two, we're going to have to change this house pretty completely, because having a little toddler trotting around in our house, we're going to have to make some changes. So here we are. Rocky isn't even born yet, and we're already thinking about all the things. We're creating dreams for our future, our dreams for what we want for Rocky. And that starts soon. So if your pregnancy miscarries, then not only have you lost this sense within yourself and in your home, but all of those dreams that everybody started talking about and being happy about, all of those dreams are now broken because the baby isn't going to be here. All of those dreams count. They're broken, they're lost. And so those things all add up, and we don't typically think about that, but that's one of the reasons why such a loss, people say, well, you know, let's just get over it and move on and maybe try to get pregnant again. But we need to stop and pause and not just move on to the next thing. Because when there's a loss, there's something lost also inside us, and sometimes a part of our identity. Because this young woman, in being pregnant for the first time, she began to think of herself as, what am I going to be like as a mom? And then her husband thinking about, oh, I'm going to be a dad, and what kind of a dad am I going to be, and what preparations do we need to make? Puts you into another role, a significant role, if you care. And this couple cares deeply, passionately. So when the baby is lost, then part of yourself is lost as well. And it affects not only yourself, but it affects your relationship, because you're both feeling hurt and sad. You don't want to make it any worse for the other person. And yet, what do? It's like sometimes people tiptoe around it and they don't want to make it any worse, and so they don't want to talk about it. And yet, when there's grief, bottom line, the first rule is we need to tell the story It's as simple and as pure as that. We need to tell the story. And my ideal is that we tell the story at least three times to three different people. And of course, it has to be someone that you trust, where they're strong enough and wise enough to just listen. And those of you who have someone who's lost something, and it could be, your daughter tried out for cheerleading, or your son tried out for the school newsletter, and they weren't picked. They have a loss. And that we need to listen to them tell the story. They need to not just stuff it, not just go on to the next thing, or not keep a stiff upper lip. They need to quietly somewhere tell somebody about how much they wanted it and how disappointing it is, or how hurtful it is, or how scary it is, or how embarrassing and humiliating it is to have lost something. And all of those things make us feel really vulnerable because we don't want to be scared. We don't want to be sad and hurting. We don't want to be humiliated or embarrassed or ashamed. And yet, that speaks from the heart. It speaks from that we cared. And I know I've talked about this before. So let me walk you through what this model teaches us. And it can be very handy with you, with your loved ones, with kids, because it's simple, it's clear, and it's kind of elegant. So it's this model here, and this is the old dream in the blue, and this is the new dream in the yellow. The important thing is what's in between those two, the old dream and the new dream, is the no dream. And that's the place of loss. That's the place of adjusting to loss. That means that you don't just go from this to this. You've got to go through the journey in between. And the bigger the loss, or the more impactful it is on us, the longer it takes to go through that journey of the grief process and the adjustment to the loss. Now, let me share with you, I know I've got it here somewhere. Yeah. I have a list of, it's called the adjustment scale, or the social readjustment scale. And there are several versions of this, and you may find one online pretty easily. But there's a list of life events and how much, kind of quantifying the value that that event or that impact is on you. And this is like a list of 43. I have another list that's even longer than that. But it just goes down, and then it gives a numeric value, kind of just a guesstimation on how powerfully this impacts you. And so, of course, the thing that's at the very top of the list is the thing that I care about most in my private practice, marriage. And the thing at the top of the list is the death of a spouse. And we, arbitrarily assign that a 100. The things at the bottom are the stress of Christmas, which is stressful, but that's only a 12. The stress of a vacation, the stress of a change in eating habits, a mortgage or loan less than $10,000, that's only 17. Change in your residence, 20. Going on up there, change in the number of arguments with your spouse, 35. Gain of a new family member, 39, whether that's a new baby, a new marriage, a step parent. Pregnancy is a 40. Sexual difficulties is a 39. Retirement is a 45. Marriage is a 53. Marital reconciliation is a 45. Personal injury or illness, 53. Marital separation, 65. Divorce, 73. So all of these things are changes, and a change inherent in that says that we've lost something and we're moving towards something else. So let's look at this grief model here. The blue circle that's on My left, is that on your left? I have to think about that one. This is the old dream. And dream is used as a generic term. It could be anything. It could be a dog that died. It could be a job that you lost. It could be you moved to a new home. Even though it's the home of your dreams, you're still losing the old home. And all the memories that went with that home and the way you were in that home, those were then and they were valuable. And there's kind of like, gee, we're not going to do this anymore. We're not going to have that anymore. And so that's a lost or broken dream. And what you want to do in that case is tell the story. Now look at this. When you get popped out of the old dream, you get popped into the new dream. And this is how we naturally adjust to loss and change. And we go through the stages of grief. Some people don't want to do that. So I think about it as they get popped out into no dream, but they say, no, I'm refusing this. I don't want to lose this. Like, for example, the lady who lost her pregnancy. She loses her pregnancy, and then the next day it's like, no, this can't be happening. And that's, in some way, we call the denial of the loss. The first stage is denial, because we can't say yes because it was something so fondly held. So, and it's very interesting, and I'll share this with you. Out of all the children that I've worked with in my private practice, and I don't typically work with children, but over the years people have asked me to, or they've brought me their children, and I do that. Out of all the children that I've seen, I would say 90% of them are stuck in what we call complicated bereavement, which means they can't finish, they can't complete moving through the grief process. And that, in a word, means grieving and letting go of the old dream. So let me give you an example. There was one very robust child who was running two families. She had a room in her mom's house. She had a room in her dad's house with her new stepmother. And she finally, when I really uncovered it and saw what she was doing, she didn't like it. She stormed out of my office, even though she was 11 years old. Her mother went with her. They never came back. She was riveted in the opinion that if she didn't give up on the old dream, that she'd finally get her family back. She'd get her dad to divorce her stepmother, to move back into their house, and she would have her mom and dad and her all to herself. And she was running the family with her oppositional, defiant behaviors, and she was very creative. And her mom didn't have very good boundaries, so it was a mess. So what happens is you go into the old dream and you get popped out of it every time she went to her dad's house with her stepmom. But she'd get there and she'd say, no, this isn't what I want. I'm not accepting it. I am going back into the old dream and I won't give up on it. And who can blame her? Her family was the thing that meant the most in the whole world to her. And she wasn't about to give up on it. And in essence, her attitude was, what's the matter with you guys? You're all giving up on the dream. You're all giving up on the thing that's the most important thing in life. Well, I'm not. And I've had this same dynamic with child after child, sometimes with an ex-spouse too. So every time she came up against that her dream was lost, she said, no, I'm standing up for the dream and I refuse. So she was in denial, and she was also in anger. Very angry that other people had given up on the dream, but she hadn't, and she refused to, which means she refused to let go of the past and to move into the future for herself. So that's one of the things that happens in that complicated bereavement. We get popped out of the old dream. We say no, pop back in, but it's not there. Get popped out, say no, get. So it's this circle of refusing to let go. So notice when we finally let ourselves look at what's lost. The grief there is, first there's shock or emotional numbness, isolation, where it's like, oh no, kind of that. There's no emotional response, just, oh no. And when people are at a funeral, or right after a death, or right after a loss, it's kind of like just walking around like deer in the headlights. It's like, what just happened? The next thing is mourning, or the emotional reaction to the loss, which includes all of the emotions, every one of the emotions. And that's when we enter what we classically call grieving or mourning. I've got somebody giving me a question. Let's see what it is. Okay. Heather, thank you for talking about this hard subject. Oh, well, it's not hard for me. I'm reverent about it. So I'm grateful for your appreciation. It's been almost a year since my divorce, and I'm still feeling like I blew it. But a whole year, and I'm still not over it. Yeah. You're in complicated bereavement, aren't you, dear? I agree. You are the perfect person to talk us through this topic. You have already helped tremendously. Oh, already? You were ready, dear. How do I make what you call a new dream while I'm still trying to get over this? Well, you can't. You can't, dear. I feel like it's being dishonest to try to move on when it doesn't feel right to do so. And you're absolutely right. That's the healthy feeling. You've got to finish letting go before you can look ahead. So notice all that stuff in between there in the no dream state. Now, let me get very clear, dears. That no dream state, are you ready? How long does it last? How long does that no dream state last, where we're in the middle? We're in the chrysalis or the cocoon. It can last, depending on how significant we felt the loss was or is, it can last anywhere from 1.5 years to 3 years. 1.5 years to 3 years. Because we have to find ourselves again. We have to redefine a part of our sense of identity. And that means just purely living through life in this new way. Now, if it's a lesser loss, like for example, you move into a new apartment. It may take you, 3 months to adjust to the new apartment. You can't even remember how it was where you were before. But if you've moved out of your family home where you grew up, and you kept visiting back there, and you didn't really move out until you were in university or college. So you spent at least 18, 20 years in that home, and your parents and you move out of it. You'll be disoriented for 1.5 years to 3 years, and so will they. So, and also this place of moving through the denial, and then moving through the kind of numbness and shock, that even in the case of the death of a loved one, or something that's really bad and horrifying and unexpected, we usually do not have an emotional response. We usually do not connect into the agony and the pain and the feelings, all of the emotions, for 90 days. 3 months, dears, which means you're not crying at the funeral. The death was only within the last week. And yes, people are crying because they're shocked and they're sad. But sometimes the family members are not really going to move into the agony of processing through the loss for 3 months. And by the time the grief just hits you and you can't avoid it because you're crying regularly through the day and you're lost and you're exhausted, 3 months later, people are saying, well, what, are you okay? What's the matter? Aren't you over it yet? They don't know that 90 days is when you start. Because 90 days is when you really, really have walked through enough of the places in your life to feel how much has changed, how much will never come back, and how different you are as a result of it. So this next step of the grief, which here says the mourning or emotional reaction to loss, which includes all of the emotions, sadness, emotional pain, anger, outrage, fear, anxiety, worry about the future, what if I would have done, what's my accountability, hatred for somebody else that you blame, or yourself that you blame, or God that you blame, depression, because oftentimes there's nothing you can do and all that energy is just stuck. And then of course feeling guilty about whatever. Sometimes it's irrational guilt, sometimes it's just guilty because there's nothing you can do about it. So all of those feelings start just blowing through us after about 90 days when it's a big loss. And you can't tell which one's going to come up next. Your mind is in chaos, which means you're mostly in your feelings, and you're not very connected with your intelligence because you're so emotional. And that means you're, if you go to my home website, my Heather Carlile website, and you go to the grief recovery page, there's a list of things you know you're grieving when. And if you check off even 5 or 10 of the things on that list, it reminds you you're grieving. And grief is all of this emotional chaos. It's exhausting. It takes so much energy. And that means you need to make extra allowances for yourself as you move through this. And please do not stop it. Please do not stuff it, or you'll extend your grieving. Or like the lady that shared about her, the loss of her marriage. You're still stuck. You're still not able to move forward because you've got to grieve it and let it go. And that's often really exhausting. And it hurts. It's very uncomfortable because if you loved whatever it was that you lost, it hurts to let it go. It hurts that it's gone. It hurts that you can't have it anymore. So sometimes we bargain. If we can't bargain with somebody, we bargain with God or with ourselves. This is usually an exhausting, emotional, and chaotic period. I can't describe that enough for you. But that's the way that we honor. When something important is lost, we wear the black armband. We wear the widow's weeds, the black, like in the old tradition, so that people know to leave us alone because we're exhausted, because we're mourning. And if we don't mourn, then we're not really grieving and we're not letting go, and then we can't move forward. So there are many ways to walk through the grief, and in my grief recovery process, I talk about the meaning of all these feelings and what they want from us as we move through this. And I don't have time to do that in 1 hour, but I can give you the overview. So once you move through all the feelings, it may take you 3 months, it may take you 3 years, then you're letting go. And the journey through the no dream can last 3 years and may be so difficult that it is as dark as experiencing the valley of the shadow of death or the dark night of the soul. And that's why the butterfly metaphor is always the perfect one for transformation. Notice under the blue circle it says the larva or the caterpillar. That's the old dream. And then you move through into the chrysalis, or the cocoon, where the caterpillar weaves itself into this envelope, goes into the dark place, and dissolves into what I think of as kind of like molecular mush, because it dissolves the caterpillar, restructures, transforms, and then moves out into the butterfly. And notice when we move out of the chrysalis, move out of the cocoon, just like the butterfly, we're kind of like still shaky, still not quite formed, not strong and ready to fly yet. So that metaphor is so elegant and so true. That space in the chrysalis or the cocoon is the dark place. You know, it's all tight, there are no windows out, and that's how grieving can feel sometimes, when we are in this place of just trudging through the pain, trudging through the loss. And it is the valley of the shadow of death, where death is weighing on us, the death of someone we loved, the death of a dream, the death of a country, the death of a pet, the death of an ideal, the death of the dreams that we had for our children, and on and on. The death of the dreams that we had for our future when the stock market took all of our funds. So then moving through that and finally getting through the dark night of the soul, the valley of the shadow of death, and accepting that it's gone. And then kind of feeling naked, vulnerable, not sure who you are, not sure what your life is going to look like now. And then saying, okay, it's gone. I've put it behind me. I'm not sure who I am. I'm not sure where I'm going, but I'm ready for something new. And in looking forward, our eyes lift up and we feel a sense of renewal and hope for the future, or excitement about the future. But only then can we start taking the steps towards what we want next. And sincerely, dears, the best way that I know to release the past is writing and telling your story to others. So you want to write, you want to get it all out on paper so that it's outside of your mind, your heart, and it's all down there and you're very clear. So one of the things in grief recovery I have people do is to make a list of all the secondary losses. So for example, if this couple who lost their pregnancy, if they were starting to prepare, you know, if they knew what the sex of the baby was, and they already have little boy things, well, if they get pregnant again, hopefully they do, it may be a little boy or it may be a little girl, and they're going to have to let go of whatever that was, and the sadness of that. And writing about that, telling that story, you've got to tell it to each other, dears. And you want to tell it to the people who love you and are strong enough to just listen and not try to fix you or fix your dream or take you into the future. And if they don't know that, then let them know. Coach them a little bit on what you need, because people who are close to you really, really honestly and truly want to help. That's why I put at the bottom of my handout tonight, on the second page, the things that are not helpful responses and the things that are helpful responses. So when you're going through this, let's see. Let me see what our friend here has said. This may be a bit off topic, but more than my actual loss, the person I usually relied on most, besides my spouse, completely failed me. Well, there you go, dear. That's a whole system of secondary losses. Now, when you lose a spouse, that's a whole system of losses and secondary losses. You lost your best friend. You lost your tennis partner. You lost the person that went with you socially. You lost the person that held you at night. You lost the person that you talked to all the time. You lost somebody to have breakfast with, and on and on and on. All the empty spaces that are left by the loss of a spouse. Then if you lose a dear friend, There's a whole another system of secondary losses, which means you really truly are in the dark night of the soul, left all alone. Let's see. When I address their letting me down, they distance themselves even farther. In your opinion, is it best to try and reason with that person or to just move on? Well, unless I knew you and this person, I couldn't say. Because maybe this person is a friend for life and they just really are just really uncomfortable with loss and grief and being in that space with negative emotions. Some people they just don't know how to handle that, and they just kind of distance and check out and kind of wait until it goes away. So maybe that's just a person who doesn't know how to handle emotions, and that they're a friend in a whole nother way. And so in that case, you don't give up on that friend. You just know that that friend is a friend in this world. Maybe that's your tennis partner, you know? And that's what that friend is good at, and not good at supporting you with emotional trauma. In that case, you want to find somebody who can be there in that empathetic way. Reasoning with that person, maybe. I don't know. I don't know the nature of the friendship or the connection that you have with that person. I ask because this loss, on top of my initial loss, hurt just as much, indeed. Because your spouse is your opposite sex best friend, and it sounds like you're talking about your same sex best friend. We usually, each of us have two friends, our spouse, and if I'm a woman, my girlfriend, or if I'm a man, my guy friend, or a couple of girlfriends or guy friends. And if you're getting both, that tells me that it's kind of like a spiritual ordeal for you, where your external supports are being taken away, and you're forced up against really being sensitive to who you are and how you need to get support for yourself. And only you can know that, and maybe it shows you that you haven't got an investment in a support system that's robust enough for what any human being healthily needs. Good. That's exactly it. I'm not sure which was exactly it, but I'm talking in generalities here about us as human beings, what's natural to us, rather than any one person. So, and you know, usually that fits the bill. So, as I said, you need to tell your story. And telling your story, think about what a biography or an autobiography does. Think about what journaling does. It's kind of like you want to honor or make special whatever it is you're writing about or talking about. You tell, your grandparents or your parents, they tell that story about such and so because they loved it, because that was something that was meaningful to them. And in telling the story, they're making it special. They're placing it in a place of honor. Well, grieving is the same way. We need to tell the story to say, this is what it was, and this is how it happened. And it was really important, and now it's gone. And that's one of the reasons, and honestly and truly, dear ones, I'm going to type this for you. Tell your story. Go to a grief recovery group. That's one of the reasons I loved running grief recovery groups years ago. I did it for a long time because it's a sacred space. Everybody there has lost something, and there's no judgment about what people have lost and how they respond to it. It's a healthy place of honoring transformation. And the Visiting Nurses Association in Dallas, if you want to know resources, I've got a list that I will email you if you ask me. And it's the VNA. Visiting Nurses Association in Dallas. They are just wonderful. They have a free lunch every month for someone who has lost a beloved, and they know resources and they have materials as well. So look, if you need to get connected, talk to the VNA and email me, because I've got a list of places. Usually it's a church, and they don't care whether or not you belong to their church. They will have somebody facilitating a grief recovery group. And that is a place where it's kind of like you can go and tell your story in a safe spot where other people are telling their stories. You support each other, and there's a special thing that happens when you go there and you don't necessarily know the other people, because that makes it safe, and it's an even Steven. You know, you're giving and they're giving. Both are receiving. So when you're in a state of loss and grief, you really do need to be in a grief recovery group. My favorite one, my very favorite one in the Dallas Metroplex, is the Journey of Hope. It's a large organization that's beautifully run for parents and children in Plano. So look up the Journey of Hope. I know some people who volunteer for it, and it's, if you go there or send someone there, all you will find, you will feel so much gratitude for them. Okay. So we go into the chrysalis, we come out, and just because we finished the grieving process, going into the butterfly, as I said before, it's not fully formed. That's the new dream. We don't know, we can't know what the new dream is. We can just be kind of looking, saying, what's next? This is the unknown, and as yet, the unknowable. So one of the things that happens with people, and they ask me this, it's not uncommon for them to say, is there going to be somebody else for me in my life? You know, after I've lost the use of my leg, am I going to be able to be productive? Am I going to find a job that I love? Those questions come to us because we can't know, we can't see, we can't predict. And yet, there's a sense of what's next. That's a vulnerable place. And that place takes us to a new part of the journey of life, where all in the same time we feel new and strong and like we've grown, and that we're kind of like vulnerable and unformed and not sure, unsure. And that place, I'll never forget, one of my colleagues introduced me to that idea so elegantly so many years ago. She said, the thing which is most difficult for people to tolerate is ambiguity. An ambiguous place, which means, well, I don't know if I want this or that or that. I don't know. I can't know. And that's a vulnerable spot. So that it's a place of openness, a place of potentiality. It's a pregnant place. It's a place of possibility. And if we try too quickly to just grab onto the next thing, it may be not what we want. And this is where the caution comes in of, we get a divorce and we're popped out of a relationship and we're really, really scared in that grieving place, and we latch onto whoever comes that feels safe. And yet it's an ill-formed choice, because we haven't really found who we are and what we want to do next. We're not trying things out and saying, okay, is this what's next? No, not quite right. Well, let me try that. This process takes patience. And if you know at the outset that it's going to take you this adjustment, 1.5 years to 3 years, you relax the pressure. You get more patient. And you also put yourself in that place where You really deeply live through the process. You don't skip over stuff. You don't kind of just slide by it. You take it step by step and feel it, know it, understand it. I'm thinking about one of the women in one of my grief recovery groups. She was truly a wise woman. She was in her early 50s, and her husband had, he was the love of her life. They had a fabulous marriage and home and family, and he just dropped dead on their front lawn of a heart attack. And so she was in deep grief. She'd lost so much, her all in all. And yet she was old enough and wise enough, and she had a great support system. She was a wonderfully intelligent and healthy woman, that she journeyed through this in agony and in reverence. She didn't miss a step. She didn't skip anything. She didn't avoid anything. She walked through the honoring her husband and the way the community commemorated him and honored him. I was so proud of her. And as oftentimes happens when you experience a significant loss like that and such powerful feelings, we become very creative and artistic. She began writing poetry, just divinely beautiful poetry. She'd never written poetry before, but the experience of the loss of this great love poured out of her. And that's the pregnant place, the creative place, where she was finding herself new, and she wasn't rushing through. She traveled by herself to see her kids, to see friends far away, just not knowing who she was going to be, and reconnecting and telling her story. Being able to tell her story is lovely. To have experienced a woman who was wise and strong and good and true and knew the depth and the sweetness of great loss, and doing it with the utmost humility and the utmost wisdom and ability to be heartfelt, I should say. Any other questions, any other thoughts any of you have? I don't want you to skip any steps, but the question that the lady asked in the beginning about not being able to move on since her divorce, since losing her marriage, losing her lifestyle. So often, divorce is the thing that I want us to avoid most of all, because it's so devastating in so many ways. But when it's the right thing, when it's time and a relationship is done, it's ended, it's complete, we need to be able to move forward and say, well, then what's next for me? And my strongest recommendation is that you find out, who am I now? Because I can't know what's next for me until I re-know myself, until I relearn myself as who I am at this stage of my life. Who have I become through this marriage, and who am I now ready to be? Like this lady who took the time to travel, to see her old friends in other states, to think about what she really loved in life. And she did take a trip internationally. And she was in a very, very gentle, very alert, creative space. And she was doing it with such grace and such flair, such creativity, in the way of a great and wise and loving woman. So we can do that. We can choose to do that and not skip any steps. So my listener tonight, dear, in trying to let go of that past relationship, you're going to need to tell the story and recount to yourself all the things that you've lost, because you can't let go of them until you say, I've lost this and I put it behind me. There also may be a sticking place. You know, I was speaking a couple of weeks ago on forgiveness. There also may be a sticking place where you need to apologize and forgive, or you need to forgive yourself, because sometimes it's necessary to forgive in order to complete the process and let it go. Any thoughts, any questions? Is this helpful? Any other parts of this you'd like me to talk about before we end this discussion on the process of change, the process of moving through a grief? Heather, when you said 3 years, at first I thought, oh my God, I hope she's wrong. Exactly, because that's not what we expect to hear, is it? Now, as you're resting into it, you're saying, actually, it's comforting. Yes, because what we're doing is we're acknowledging the profundity, the magnitude of finding a new way, finding all the levels of who we are and can be next. And that then, like this lady I was telling you about, we take advantage of this pregnant place. We take advantage of this transformational spot. And yes, it takes some pressure off. And for those of you who are trying to adapt to the loss of a pregnancy, the loss of a baby, sometimes it's hard for a husband to know emotionally how to be there for his wife. And thank you. She says, I think I was trying to force myself to move on. Yeah, exactly. And as you said, it didn't feel right. So what does a husband do when his wife is grieving like that? Because he needs to grieve too, and sometimes it's harder for men to grieve. My favorite thing is that you hold each other and you grieve together. Maybe for only a minute. Maybe only for a minute every other day until the sadness is gone. Maybe you need to share with him and teach him what you need from him, because a man is beside himself if he doesn't know how to comfort his wife. And to tell him it's okay, you just need to tell the story and you need to cry and you'll be fine. So let me go over this list. Not helpful responses. The people that say these things, that want to be comforting, because they really don't know what to say. They don't, and if you tell them what to say, they will, but you don't want to say, you're not the first person this has happened to. That's discounting, isn't it? Well, it doesn't matter who else it's happened to. This is my grief. This is my loss. Don't feel bad. We'll get you a new dog. Oh, can you imagine what happens to a little boy? Don't feel bad. We'll get you a new dog. When, the dog that slept with him for 5 years, he's now alone and he's feeling lost, etc. You must be strong for your mother. Well, no, don't be strong for your mother. You're not responsible. And we're all going to grieve together. You must keep busy. Well, don't avoid your grief. Yes, it's good to have things that keep you doing things. We need to keep doing things. We need to laugh. We need to have fun. And we need time to be sad and to cry and to let go. Pack up all the things and give them away, whatever it is. It was God's will. You shouldn't question it. Well, I have to question it. If I'm a person of honor, I have to say, what was my part? Should I have done something different? Do I need to do something different in the future? I've got to sort through it before I can let it go. It's for the best. Well, it's for the best, yeah, but I'm still in pain. I heard you're not taking it well. Thank you. I need you to say, I heard you're in a lot of pain. I am. Thank you for acknowledging me. You're young. You'll fall in love again. Well, yeah, someday, maybe. I'm young, yeah, which means this hurts horribly. I'm not even sure who I am right now. It's just as well you didn't get to know the baby. Oh my God. How discounting is that? Of all the dreams and hopes you put in this, all the physical, visceral identification that you had with this, It's huge. Don't take it so hard. Well, I am taking it hard. If I didn't take it so hard, I'd be stuffing my grief and I wouldn't be honoring something that was so important to me. You've just got to snap out of it. No, I don't. I can't. This was too big and I'm not discounting it. No, I can't snap out of it. I'm in grief. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to be mean with you, but I really can't snap out of it. And what I really need from you is to be okay with me just walking through this journey. Just blow it off. They weren't your friends anyway. Probably shouldn't talk to this person. Maybe they weren't my friends. But those people that died in that school bus with all those kids, I can't imagine the agony of their parents. I can't blow this off. I have to go to the funeral. I have to write some letters. I have to do something because I know how bad it feels. I know exactly what you're going through. No, you don't. Even if your husband died too, you had your relationship. I have my relationship. It's my thing. Please let me have my grief. So the helpful responses. This whole thing must be very hard for you. Yeah, you understand that it is really hard. Thank you. I'm so sorry for your loss. Thank you. Thank you for feeling sorry and thank you for acknowledging my loss. It's really wonderful to have somebody here for me that understands. Would you like to talk about it? I really would. Could we have coffee? Could you tell me about it? Yes, I can tell you about it, but I'd really like to do it. Do you want to come over for dinner and we'll just have a glass of wine and I'll tell you the whole story? What happened? Oh, it's a long story. I'd love to tell you about it. Let me tell you what happened, such and so. I can't imagine how painful this must be. I know, but you're being empathetic, and it makes such a difference that you understand that I'm in pain. How did you find out? And then that asked you to tell the story, right? What a terrible shock this has been for you. You're right, it has been. You must be feeling so overwhelmed or numb right now. I am. I really am. And thank you for holding my hand in this time that I can't get away from. So connect. When you're in a place of loss, most of all, just be there. Show up for the people who are in a place of loss. So, dear, the sweetie that lost her baby, tell your husband, most of all, you just need him to be there with you. He doesn't even have to talk. Just hold your hand. Just go to the movies together, laugh together, talk together, just to be there with you. To feel his strength, to feel that he's not going anywhere, and that no matter what happens, he's there with you. He doesn't have to say anything. The worst thing you can do is to ignore the situation. And people do this because they don't know what to do. And this that I've given you tonight is just a simple little list so that you can tell them what they can. People say, oh, I want to be there for you. Just ask me. Tell me what I can do for you. So often we say, well, I'm okay. Don't worry about it. No, tell them, oh, I'd love to have supper with you. Or, yeah, I could use you to make me a dinner some night this week. Or, yes, could you just call me on the phone and just check in with me? That's the best thing that I could have. So tell them, help them. If you feel tempted to avoid the griever because you feel awkward, stop. Change your focus from yourself to the one who needs your help. A simple touch, cup of coffee, phone call is all that it takes. What we all want to do for the people that we care about. Any other questions? I love that you said, I think I was trying to force myself to move on. Yeah. And the lady and her husband, the couple who lost their pregnancy. Don't move yourself on to maybe even trying another pregnancy right away. Feel when it feels right. And you know what, from me to you, as a woman that's been around the block a time or two and I've heard a lot of stories, it's very interesting. It's kind of a divine thing that while we're still grieving, we usually don't get pregnant. There's something about the essence of who we are that until we're ready, we don't conceive again. And so let yourself have the sadness, let yourself laugh, let yourself let it go, and to say, I'm a different woman now. And in whatever way, say thank you to your husband for being there with you through this and for being such a great guy who was so excited with you when you got pregnant. Tell all those stories to each other until they're all told and you're ready to move forward again. Any other questions? Anything that you'd like me to talk about next week or in the future? I love to hear from you guys. And as you can tell, this talk tonight is one of my favorites. It's a sweet, dear subject, and it's very healthy because remember, grieving is the honoring that we give when we lose something that is precious, meaningful, or in our hearts in some way. That could be when we lose the President of the United States. It can be when we lose a dear cat that's been in our life for 5 weeks or 15 years. It can be when we lose a person or a job or some of our own faculties. Thank you for tuning in, everyone. Let me know what you'd like to hear next, or what other topics you'd like to hear from, or you'd like to hear because you know your friends want to tune in. So thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for listening and tuning in and being one of my viewers tonight. It's lovely for me. I love being able to be there for you and to know that there are people who care listening in. You're the ones who are wanting to learn, grow, and have a better life. Bravo to you, and thank you for tuning in tonight. Good night, dears. I'll see you next week, same place, same time in the Red Room.